Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
So, Dean, do you find yourself spending more or less time in grocery stores these days?
As a family?
Did you spend time in grocery stores?
Well, so I've been banned from doing the grocery shopping in my particular family, but
I feel like there's a longer story behind
there's
that,
a much longer story. It all has to do with discretionary spending and my inability to rein that in.
Gotcha.
So I was kicked off that crew. But
Funyuns and Reese cups.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you name it. It's in the basket, and the list is like out the door.
Gotcha.
But we've got, a family of 5, and I would say 3 of us go to frequent grocery stores. Yes.
Yeah.
We do a lot of grocery shopping.
Now, do you feel like your buying habits have changed, especially in the last, let's say 3 years? I don't know what's really happened in that time, but
yeah, really,
maybe things
right?
might have changed.
Yeah. I mean, the way we buy it, the whole buy online, pick up, curbside, definitely do that. All kinds of stuff around that, have changed. Yes.
Now, when you go in
we
store,
buy and all kinds of stuff. Yep.
Do you feel like when you go in the store, you're seeing a lot more different options than usual? A lot more of the private label stuff.
Yes.
Stuff
Variety.
that the stores are putting out there.
I can only imagine the pressure these folks are on to develop those kinds of products.
No
Yes.
doubt. It's not just, you can't just stock up with all the latest, Kellogg's and Coca-Cola or whatever. You gotta be a little more competitive in that these days, right?
Yeah, you can't just go in and get your crackers, your whatever, your saltine crackers, your bananas, and
you have a boring shopping list. No wonder you had to improvise.
Well, yeah, it's because my eyes are on the discretionary. Yeah.
All right. Well, today on the podcast, we're talking about groceries. We're talking about the tech challenges, the tech opportunities that might be out there to kind of help our VAR friends, figure out some potential places where maybe they can find some new opportunities with their customers based on what groceries have been doing, the trends have been happening. We have David Vander Dussen from Epson joining us again. He was on the show maybe a year and a half ago now, I think.
Yep.
He's back. He wants to talk to us a little bit about some of these trends.
Awesome.
We're going to dive deep. He's got some great statistics for us.
He does.
To back up some of the stuff. We're going to talk about some of those challenges. We're going to talk about how midsize and regional chains are doing and why they are or aren't doing well. We're going to get into stuff like how grocers have changed their offerings and their workflow because of, again, this pandemic and the way people's habits have changed.
Yep.
And we're going to talk again, we're going to dive a little deeper into this whole idea of this private label, these meal kits, fresh food, grab-and-go options, where that's coming from, and maybe how our VARs can benefit from that kind of stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. Not on the consumption, but like selling
not
solutions.
On the consumption side. I mean, sure, you can benefit from the consumption, I suppose, too. And, there might be some nice healthy options out there.
I like it.
Not Funyuns and Reese cups.
That's right. Yeah.
All that plus our usual value to the VAR and what's tech connecting with us. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, we have a returning guest today. We have David Vander Dussen coming back. He is the product manager for system devices at Epson. David, welcome back to the show. We're glad to have you back. First of all, we love your setup there. You guys have done a great job at creating an awesome, cool little, media room for this. So we appreciate that. And a big shout out to the folks behind the scenes that make that happen. But thanks for coming back. What have you been up to over the last year or so?
Thanks for the invite. I'm excited to be here, especially talking about grocery. I do love to eat. But yeah, and to be in our new commercial demo room here, as we've been able to welcome our partners, our customers back, it's really nice to have an area to kind of show off the solutions we're working on, what we can bring, and be able to improve the experience when we can join in events like this. So excited to be here. Thanks again for back. And, last year, you mentioned product manager for system devices over here at Epson, working with a lot of the flagship point of sale and thermal printers like the T88s, the H6000s. The grocery sector has been a really interesting area for us to keep our eye on. Obviously, we went through a huge spike in use as they remained open through the entirety of the last 3 years, through whatever event that was. And then have continued to grow, right? But it's a consistent need there, but it's been changing in a lot of interesting ways, and in ways that are easy to relate directly to because I've seen my own shopping habits change in that area as well.
Oh, and by the way, before we dive into it, Epson has upped their game as far as, the environment that David is in and the technology they're using here. So for all future guests of the TEConnect podcast, just refer to this one. He's in this nice, it's not a lab. I don't know. What did you call it again? Like an experience, right? A customer experience kind of area. Yeah.
It's a part of our customer experience center here at our headquarters in Los Alamitos. So.
Very nice.
Yeah. Okay. We're not going to expect you maybe to go quite that far, but maybe something.
We got standards.
Maybe
John.
something a little more high tech than your kid's bedroom. I don't know.
Okay. Well, whatever. Yeah.
See what you can do.
Fair enough.
Oh, hey, look, we got even a little behind the scenes here to see what it looks like.
For all those of you listening in audio, I apologize. Go on to YouTube.
Yeah, seriously,
and watch.
Go check it out. Yeah,
they've got a nice little studio going.
It's worth the check out here.
All right, John. Let's get into it. All
right. Well, okay. David kind of teed me up here a little bit of grocery habits have changed and things happening in the grocery environment. We've obviously had some challenges over the last few years.
Sure.
There was that pandemic thing. Have we reached like Voldemort level with the pandemic
yet? Where
we're just like the thing that shall not be named.
Right.
There's inflation. Obviously we've been dealing with a lot of inflationary issues, increased competition. And again, all this, the ideas of online purchasing now, whether it's a click and collect kind of thing, or you've even got a lot of retailers that are just doing delivery or ship to home. I'll be honest, I'm one of these folks that got into the whole meal kit delivery service thing. Yeah. So, so there's a lot potentially taking business away from grocery stores. And yet, recent reports seem to indicate that midsize and regional chains are still seeing growth. So let's start there, David. Why is that? How is this happening that despite all these things that should be going wrong in grocery, they're still experiencing growth?
Yeah. And, I think there's a couple key things that are keeping that demand there, keeping it in the grocery stores. One is just the continued work from home, right? And, appreciate you team me up with some of the stats. I do like to go and dive into some of the reports and surveys that are released. This one's from McKinsey with their State of the Grocery. And, they point out there that 58% of people can still work from home 1 day a week. 35% have the option to work from home 5 days a week, so the entire work week, keeping people closer to their homes, closer to the kitchen and the rest of their pantry that they have there, increases their desire and extends the behavior change that we saw during the pandemic, where they're staying home more, they're cooking more meals, they're bringing in the ready-made or the meal kits to use there. So keeping people closer to their home through work from home, not having the full return to office back to the situation we were before the pandemic. I think that's one of the real key ones to consider. So we talk a lot about, or I'd like to jump straight to the buying behaviors, what they're doing, but where the consumer and the customer is buying from. Right, this hasn't reverted to what it was prior to the pandemic. They're still staying in their own neighborhoods more. They're working from home. They're staying in those areas and continuing with the changes in preferences that we saw rise during the pandemic.
A couple things that I've noticed here, and maybe it's so there is a smaller store, if you will, up in my neck of the woods, up in northern Cincinnati, and I've noticed in kind of preparing for this particular show here, I noticed a couple things about there. They really focused on the experience shopping. I feel like much more than we'll just say the larger grocery stores. Experience shopping in the sense that you could shop, but they had like a bar inside and you could go and have a drink and stuff like that. I know some of the large ones have
another
that.
reason you're not allowed to go shopping, right?
Right, because, I'm sidestepping into the bar. But seriously, but they had other services. Like they have wood-fired pizzas that you can get. So we ordered one. We were a bunch of people. We ordered one and then we sat at the bar, had a drink. And then, so it turned in, it was more than just grocery.
Right.
Then their selection was astronomical in certain areas, like cheeses. I've never seen as many cheeses as this small grocery store, like whole wheels of cheese. And it's like, I'm a cheese guy.
So they have like an
so I'm-
olive bar or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, right. So, and then just additional services. It felt like they had more people running around, kind of like the Trader Joe's. I guess if you've ever been into a Trader Joe's, they're really kind of pride themselves on those types of things. So I was noticing that, and maybe that's where midsize is kind of seeing their niche is in some of these areas, right?
Right.
It's catering to, we got more people working from home, more people having discretionary time to go and shop. Everybody turned into a foodie during the pandemic. So, it seems somewhat intuitive, right? That we're starting to see a rise in that.
Yeah, the days of bread making, and sourdough, and all that stuff that everybody was doing at the beginning of the pandemic.
That's right.
Like just all trying at least. I mean, as I mentioned, I got into the whole meal kit thing. I love to cook anyway, but I definitely found myself cooking at home a lot more often. We obviously weren't going out nearly as much, didn't have as much reasons to be out, and then to David's point, working at home.
Yep.
I need food now 5 days a week for lunches too.
That's
for
right.
me, for my wife when she was working at home too. So there's just a lot of reason to keep going to the store. And and I know we'll kind of get into this a little bit more later too. Like, I don't feel like I started spending less. If anything, I probably started spending more.
Right.
But that was because I was shifting funds from, eating out to from other things, from the gas expenditures, and able to move that over to groceries and now, have more of that at home as well.
Yeah.
So David, something else you kind of threw in here, some stats from that McKinsey report that mentioned that the preferences for online and delivery orders, which obviously we all got into when it came to restaurants and quick service. And, that 50% during the pandemic, there was up 50% during the pandemic and rising even further this year. And I guess like that would make sense too, because again, we think of the restaurants that had to do all the shifts and the pivoting during that time. Of like, if you wanted to still have any kind of business,
you had to move.
Right?
Exactly.
The grocery stores, obviously, they had to stay open. They didn't have a choice. They had to figure it out and stay open anyway. But the smart ones also did maybe start thinking about like, all right, is there a way that we can do, that we can do BOPUS, that we can do curbside, pickup or whatever. And again, you're not, so you're not losing out on people coming to the store because they were scared to come to the store, or to your point, maybe where they would normally shop was closer to work than home now.
Right.
But now you're giving these options that are convenient and quick and easy to pick up stuff. And again, you're just meeting this demand and this need, and just and evolving it into not just the restaurant and the fast food space, but also into the grocery space. So, did you have more to add on that, David?
Yeah, I just think that one's a really interesting one, because you certainly have that increased demand for delivery, buy online, and especially if you're regional or the local grocer who can compete and differentiate themselves on the experience of having something like wood-fired pizza and a bar in your location. How do you continue to deliver that type of experience or keep that high level experience for your customer when they're not coming into the store? So it's a tough balancing act for that, because it's expensive to fulfill through delivery or the new workflows for doing something like curbside. And I just want to throw out that, I very much like shopping at my local Trader Joe's, but I think that would be improved by having a bar in the grocery. So maybe we can run that one up the recommendation box.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous of this whole, your local kind of smaller, because I don't have that. I've got, I've got one of the big dogs, and that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
There's like a tiny little, kind of grab and go convenience type store down the way, but that's just I need something basic, and I happen to be driving past here.
It's north of the city. It would be even smaller, because I really only think they have like 3 locations.
Right.
But they're as big as a Trader Joe's. I mean, the store footprint. So
I love that.
Really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. Well, then, okay, we've kind of touched on this, but go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, and I might be jumping ahead of you on this one, so I apologize if I am, but it raises a really important point in my view of what the movement for more private brands, the wider offerings in the grocery stores, the changes in that product offering, what it isn't. And that's a race to the bottom just on price. Not once, as we've been talking through this, we've talked about the experience, wanting to go toward ready-made meal kits, the delivery, the convenience. Not once have we said, oh, well, we're going, I'm only buying store label ones because I noticed they were a little bit cheaper. Matter of fact, you mentioned exactly the opposite. And where that kind of trend comes in and stays in, that's where I start to get a little excited. You can probably see it through the camera here, thanks to the nice lighting that our team put in place. But those are areas where you can bring the differentiation, where you can put a system in that shows what you are bringing to your customers bringing to their customers, and carve out that niche, right? Because it's not one universal preference that the entire country is moving toward. It's we're seeing a lot of that individual demand back and forth, what they're looking for. So I think I jumped ahead here just because I'm excited about it. But that the important note that I'm trying to convey there is, even with delivery, digital orders, majority of the sales still happening in the stores, and that experience and the identity of those grocers that they cultivate in their location, they want to extend out through all of their digital ones. And it's not just a compete on price situation. It's how do we stand out from the crowd and really engage with our community, our shoppers, our customers who are coming into the store and want to stay with us.
Really good point. If I could, so I stumbled across another survey that was by the Progressive Grocer. Didn't even know that magazine was out there, but anyway, they have some stats I want to throw at you guys here, just so we can mull on these a little bit as we have the dialogue. So, and it talked about in-store technology, and the survey was, are you up to date today? What are you planning on doing? What's a major upgrade you need to do right now? Right. And then 12 and 24 months out. So, some of the top things that people feel like they have a good handle over, easy stuff like Wi-Fi for customers, although I don't know that, I would use that. Maybe if I'm sitting at the bar.
Yeah, there you go.
See, if I'm sitting at the bar, I need it.
Check check the scores.
Food safety was high up there. Food labeling was one thing that they felt like they had good solutions for. But what are some of they're going to start doing major upgrades coming up. Their POS systems, real-time store monitoring. So I think that kind of gets to where David's talking about. People are coming back in. They want to know what's going on with these people that are coming in. And then they're making major investments in click and collect and curbside pickup. So those are the things that are happening like right now. And then if you look at the major ones that are maybe 2 years out, you start getting into such things as like scan and go technology or shopper tracking, where you're actually getting more into the analytics of that. So it's kind of fascinating. But I think some of this survey of where the in-store technology is going is kind of matching up to what we're seeing behaviorally and in the society.
This will be a good 1B episode to the one we just had a couple weeks back with visibility, about the whole store as a medium.
I was going to get into that.
In-store experience, the machine vision, again, all that kind of analytics and tracking type stuff. So,
for sure.
Well, David, you kind of, we did kind of talk about our next question here, which is this idea of, how grocers have changed their workflows and offerings. And one other stat that you put in here that I thought was really interesting was that it was from IHL that mid and high income shoppers are not reducing their spend, which again, I can vouch for that. When I think of, how much I was spending pre-pandemic to, during and now. And to be honest, it probably went up. And granted, you can
not just inflation,
right? Exactly. You could say, well, there's inflation, prices are up. Bacon's ridiculous right now, stuff like that. Sure, but I also, when because I started focusing, I was already one of the folks that was all in on like the pickup. The place my order online, go pick it up. I was in on that long before pandemic anyway. But I've also become very conscious about like bargain shopping, and to your point, I will sometimes look and say, okay, if it's not something where like I don't care what brand it is, then I'll look at the store brand and see if that's, the cheaper option, whatever's the cheapest option, whatever I've got some kind of coupon for. And, I'll call it out. I'm a Kroger shopper for the most part. That's the only really local grocer I have. They are very, very adamant about their like Simple Truth line, their private label line. Like when when I'm loading up coupons on my card to place an order, there's some weeks they will dump like 50 or 60 new coupons that are all store label Simple Truth products.
They're pushing it hard.
Exactly. Like, I'm like sorting through like, well, I just want to find where is there a, Pepsi, coupon in here somewhere. And they're promoting like 60 different, Simple Truth brands.
Forget about that.
I get. Exactly. I understand why they're doing it.
I always thought that was a dichotomy in the grocery, right?
No doubt.
You have these major brands and yet you're competing it. I don't know. I don't get it.
The brands probably aren't too too scared just yet.
No,
You know, maybe I don't know. Maybe they are.
Maybe they are now.
There's
I
probably
mean,
something
some
going
of
on at
this-
the back
yeah,
end.
right,
there.
right.
Well, then let's then dive a little further into the whole aspect of private label meal kits, grab and go options. I know my local store, I feel like, in the last several years has only continued to expand like their deli offerings, a nice, like, a refrigerated sushi section, cheese bar, olive bar, all this stuff that you normally don't think of when you're just grab and go in a grocery store. But now there's so many options to buy really cool, fresh items. So obviously this means more options for label printing. And that's the heart of what we're getting to here and where Epson obviously excels. So what are grocers doing to make this aspect of their business stand out to shoppers? How does the labeling part change when, you're really trying to, like, again, kind of compete with the brands that are actually in your store, the national and world brands that are in your store? How's that working out right now?
Yeah, and it comes down to, why are you offering that private label? Why are they doing that? I love the sushi example because it always blows my mind that we can get excellent raw fish every day at a grocery store. And I've loved some of the dishes I've gotten there. But there's a couple of underlying reasons that we've seen in some of these other surveys. FMI put one out. Almost half of people say they're not buying private label because of the price. They're buying it because of the quality. Another, 40% is just they prefer the taste of these. And when you look at how, especially on a smaller scale, right, when you're getting into local, the regional, where it's not economically viable to be doing runs of tens of thousands or more labels for a private label item, being able to have dynamic labeling, high impact color, things that you can do very localized that speak to the value proposition that private label is bringing, right? It's not just a private label here. It's made with cheese from, the farm across the hill there. This is our healthier option where we added none of these additives, or this is the vegetarian option, the vegan option. This is the perfect one for the kids when they come home from soccer practice, right? Having the ability to do the dynamic labeling on demand, just as many as you need for the products that you're producing then, allows you to really hone that narrative and that positioning of those products against the national brands, against just more generic ones. It really lets it's almost the next natural step to having something like a bar in the store or wood-fired pizza. Hey, this is a great experience for when you're here, but look, we also packaged up this experience, and this is why it's going to be superior to something that is just mass-produced.
I love that because I've seen that in my grocery store. The grab and go bag, I think is a perfect labeling opportunity, right? And you see that. Like, I see stores that are trying to personalize whatever. Maybe personalize is going a little too far, but come up with these kits. These little ready-made kits, little grab and go kits, and it's a bag, right, with a nice label on it and things of that nature. This is the trend, right? And even getting down to the personalization, which we talked about a little bit, I think, in the last podcast that we did with David. I mean, it can get that granular, right? If you have the right infrastructure in place, and maybe it is, hey, Dean, here's your bag, right? Here's your personalized grab and go bag, right. That they made for you. So yeah, like dynamic
with
printing.
like Dean's face on it.
Well, right. Well, yeah. I don't know that you would want that, but sure. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you make sure that no one else took your particular bag.
Oh, it doesn't look like me. That's not the right Dean. Yes. Got it.
I mean, after you've had like 5 or 6 drinks at the bar, maybe you need that. And you're like, you're looking at him, you're like, I can't read that. Oh, there's my face.
I'm just gonna take John's. Right. Yeah.
It's actually an important point though, because it's one that may not get as much attention here, but performing the grab and go, easy for me to say, preparing that, putting it out, dedicating the labor resources, which are also scarce right now, into picking and preparing that order, right? The margins get thinner and thinner, and everything we can do to make sure that David doesn't grab the wrong bag, right? Because that's a disappointment both for me and Drew, whose bag I took. Using the labels there to reduce some of the friction operationally, that's almost a second. We've been talking about it as a secondary benefit, but it's really one of the easier improvements to measure once these printers go in and these processes go in. As you see errors come down, as you see pick times and processing times for orders become quicker because of the efficiency of improving that process. And then, instead of having to go through, 24 virtual coupons to find the coupon that we want for this great grab and go item that we had, it can be incorporated into the label and link into a loyalty system. So there's a lot of capabilities there to select the type of information or the type of data that we want to go on the label. And we get, one, the operational improvements from using these, and then two, right, the engagement with the customer. Coming back to some of the differences in labeling there and where it can be chosen, which ones, there are going to be aspects of labeling for these, especially on the operational side, where you really are just looking for the thermal monochrome label. We need it to be reliable. We need to be able to print them all. We need to be able to apply them directly to our products and get them where they need to go. And again, that we've identified delivery, curbside, grab and go, third-party delivery, which introduces a whole nother one. And there's the, exciting for me, efficiency aspect of that. And then you get into the color labeling, which are, really exciting ones that we engage with a lot more because they're out on the grocery floor, grabbing our attention, communicating what it is that's different about these products and why I should be interested. And then going even further with the personalization, that's where we can start to leverage, loyalty or the couponing. That's I like to think of it as a way, and I may not have the tech chops to implement this on my own, but the dynamic aspect of all those labels almost gives us a way to pursue a lot of the initiatives we see done in apps, with things like prioritizing the coupons that are delivered, personalizing loyalty ones, and actually having a physical manifestation on that with these dynamic label printers. So it's, looking at the labels there and just kind of grounding myself back in where we started this one. We've talked a lot about the personalization, the experience aspect of that, but there's the opportunity here to get two value areas out of improving the labeling use. One for the efficiency and saving the margins of these alternate order flows that are continuing to grow. Then the other is positioning, the products you want or the experience you want, so you can kind of push toward filling the baskets with the products that are most profitable for the grocers.
And here's another bit of good news that I think we can layer on top of what David was just talking about. There is an increase in capital investment happening right now at the grocer level. So I think he just did a great job of painting the picture of how a lot of these things are kind of stitching together, right?
Right.
I mean, the printer is not on an island away from the app and the experience and the omni-channel that, grocers are going after.
Right.
So grocers have increased their capital expenditure by 1.3 times their historic levels currently. That's what's happening now. And we all know grocers are kind of like, they're cheap, right? They operate on razor thin margins that I know we're going to get to. So to see that they're increasing their capital expenditures on, types of technology and these types of things that we're talking about, also consider that venture capital firms raised $10 billion for grocery startups in the first 6 months of 2021. So I know that was a year ago, but you can see that when VC money going into grocers. I mean, I would have never put that on my radar.
I mean, again,
something.
It's the one business you can't just get rid of. Like,
That's
everyone's going to need groceries.
It's kind of like healthcare. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Healthcare is there, utilities, groceries. We need all these.
Until they figure out a way to give us one of those little futuristic, pills that we can eat that feels like a full meal
for
and gives
a
us all
week.
the
You're good
nutrients
for a
we
week.
need.
Yeah,
exactly. we all still need to go to the grocery store. Even if we're not buying the healthiest stuff, we're still there. So
Yeah.
this kind of reminds me of in my previous life before BlueStar. I've mentioned this before. I worked for a food service equipment company, and a big part of, and I've talked about this a little before too, a big part of our kind of go-to-market strategy to differentiate us from other companies was this idea of visual merchandising being an important part of how you go out there and position, whether you are running a cafeteria or whether you
all the way down
are,
to the colors.
A deli, a bakery, whatever it is. So it was a lot of work we did with grocery stores. There was like 5 fundamentals of visual merchandising that we always put out there to our partners, and 2 of those were color and communication. And color labeling accomplishes both of those.
Boom. That's right.
You can create, colors that pop and that make people pay attention, make them stop and look. Again, we just talked about the whole store as a medium thing. We're talking about digital displays as the stop and look. Well, guess what? A great label, a great, something that pops off of a, if you're looking at like a, let's say like a refrigerated case that's filled up with, salads and I don't know, yogurts and beverages, whatever it is, all stuff maybe you've made in-house and prepackaged daily. And if you just look at it from afar and all you just see is just a bunch of plastic packaging with stuff in it, you may not be all interested. Like, whatever, I know what that is. I'm not going to take a look at it. If you glance over and you're seeing all these cool colors popping off, maybe they use, reds for, spicy foods, and they're using green for like clean foods, whatever it is. That's the stuff that you pay attention to. And there was research behind this that indicated like people stop and pay attention when color catches their eye.
They do.
They want to come closer to it and look and see what it is. And that's all you need. That's that whole entice them, draw them in, and then once they're drawn in, they're a little more likely to browse, a little more likely to buy something.
And it speaks to the quality issue, right? Like if you come across, you got the whole color palette going, it lures you in, and then like you walk up to in a grocery store, whether it's like a hot meal or something that's already prepared, and the packaging is nice and all, and then the label is like falling apart. That would have a negative impact. But if it's this nice, gorgeous, color palette matches with the whole color scheme, that's exactly where these folks are need to go for the customer.
Or let's say there's a picture, an image of what the food is, the prepared food looks like, and what's inside the box. Like if it's just something where you just have a flat, static, black and white, chicken tenders and broccoli, and it's like CHIX. And broccoli's misspelled or something.
Taped onto the side. It's just taped on.
That's all it says. Are you more likely to pick that up and take it home, not having any clue what it actually is in there, or the one where there's a nice vibrant label and maybe a gorgeous picture of what the completed meal is going to look
It gets to the customer experience, and the grocers really they know they need to up their game.
Exactly.
It's it's the whole retailing, if you will, of food that has made a difference. Anyway, I wanted to throw that on there.
No, that was good.
Money's starting to get dumped into here. So
there's again opportunity. We're going to get to a little more of that opportunity here in a little bit too.
Yeah.
So David, let's wrap up this main conversation talking a little bit about some of the other store technologies that are out there. I know Epson isn't just about printers, and you guys play in other spaces too. So how does this this whole idea of more private labeling, more grab and go options, more opportunities to bring people in store and give them unique options, how does this enable some of the other store technology initiatives like online ordering, self-checkout? Do those really work together in this situation? Are we talking about competition here when it comes to this goal of, again, increasing basket size and emphasizing the store brands?
Yeah, and I don't think we can ever consider online ordering, delivery, pickup. I don't think we ever consider them competition again. They've really become table stakes. So if you don't handle them well, if you don't put systems in place to handle them well, it's just simply going to put you at a disadvantage. But having said that, the move toward those, enabling those systems, because they are table stakes, and we've mentioned a couple times, they tend to be more expensive workflows, right? They came in. If you wanted to stay open, you wanted to catch that 50% increase that we talked about in online ordering and delivery that we saw during the pandemic. If you wanted to catch that, you put any system that you could into place to be able to deliver orders through these channels. With that capital investment that you mentioned that's coming in, there's a chance now to optimize it, to do this in the best way possible, not just for preserving margins, but also for delivering the improved experience. So I think they go really nicely together as the investment comes back in. as processes and workflows are reworked and improved from, as what we can do now as best we can to really what we see as the ideal way to handle these workflows, then it plays really, really nicely in, because it's similar solutions that can help you improve with both the digital orders that are coming in and with the branding of the private label, or calling out and drawing attention to what it is in the stores there. And, jumping a bit off here, but, recently had one about visibility, or stock visibility, you said, correct? And when you're ordering online, if I have a particular brand of, say, orange juice that I greatly prefer, right? Now, if that's out of stock as I'm trying to order online, I'm getting prompted with something else. But now the store can see if they're capturing this type of information, that I actually wanted orange juice brand A, but I'm settling for orange juice brand B. And through the labeling for inventory management and creating that kind of universal view, you can then leverage that, more data on your customers, a better view into the systems. So it's, they all have an opportunity to work together to enable them. And it's with the weight that is given to ordering online, or the digital orders, and the preferences for that continuing to grow, still being a very important part of the business, table stakes to really be successful, but not overtaking necessarily the in-store ones. I think it's really important to look at how whatever solution is going in can be leveraged and improve multiple aspects of engaging with the customer and delivering the experience, right? We can't just put in a label printer only to do this one thing because it improves, the curbside experience. We're looking at leveraging that same type of solution, connecting it to other systems, driving multiple labels or pieces of information, perhaps, to deliver that experience, but also be driving interest and engagement with the customer into the items that we want to provide, or other order areas that allow us to build baskets, build loyalty, build engagement with them.
Let's go a little bit down, because you provided some information on the economics of how some of these things impact the store, and hopefully you can help me navigate some of this. So one of the charts that you had there, David, was talking about margins, grocer margins, and if it's in store, it looks like groceries operate at a 2 to 4% margin, right? I mean, kind of average, again, razor thin, and we're used to that in distribution, so it's no big deal. But anyway, but when you look at the margins, it economically, it doesn't look like it's beneficial for grocers to do. For example, the grocer picks from the store and it's home delivered, or the grocer picks up in store and people are coming in and getting it. If they don't associate some fees associated to that, it's actually a negative margin proposition for them to get into that, right? So maybe your commentary there, is that where we're going to start seeing? I mean, I know fees are involved in all that, but what are you seeing grocers making up some of those negative margins that are happening specifically in those areas that we're all wanting more of? We want more buy online pickup, right? Mm-hmm. We want the personalization, all that great stuff. But if it's having a negative impact on margins that are already razor thin, what's the reality that maybe they're investing in it today, but that's not a long-term play? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I always appreciate the call back to the charts. Gives me a chance to go into these surveys I'm talking about. But we're going to bring in a couple of the sources and the charts to kind of address this one. The chart we're thinking about initially came from Bain on that one, and again, exactly as you mentioned, the 2 to 4% margins in store, thin for grocers, and it's very expensive. I mean, they have in the most common models, right, an expectation to lose 15 points of margin if the grocer picks an online delivery from the store themselves.
That's unbelievable, right? I mean, that's
Unbelievable.
huge. Yeah.
But it's not all doom and gloom with that, because those are really based on how they do it now. And you look at the investment, you look at the options that are coming, there is a opportunity to save a large amount of that margin, or preserve it, I should say, through optimizing the process. You know, the 15% or the 15% loss in margin coming from Bain can be kind of balanced if we go back and look at some of the IHL data. You know, they expect that these things, through optimizing the process, you can preserve about half of that margin in the store. And that doesn't necessarily take into account, or doesn't limit you to just those optimizations. You know, we've seen square footage in these grocers being rededicated to being almost a micro fulfillment center within the store. You know, in some of the larger brands, actual dark stores, no customer foot traffic, and just dedicated to delivering those. You know, we talked about all the startup and venture capital investment. There's some really interesting startups in those areas looking just at the last mile delivery, which is the most expensive mile by far. So especially that Bain chart showing how incredibly expensive some of these alternate ones. You know, I don't see that as a reason not to pursue those. As a matter of fact, I've already called them table stakes. I've said you have to do these to be successful. I think that's more a flag and an area to focus on. These are the biggest opportunities to deliver incredible value to the grocers and to their customers. Right? So, you know, it can start simply by improving the amount of time it takes for an employee to go and pick the order and deliver it to the pickup station. Maybe we do that with carts. Maybe we do that with labels. Maybe we get them a mobile device that allows them to scan and see orders as they move around the store. You know, maybe we combine that with looking at some of these new fulfillment or delivery services and startups that are addressing some of the last mile issues. So, you know, the economics are a little scary when you look at it right off the bat, but there's a large number of ways to pick pieces of that and improve it. And if you can tie those to multiple delivery streams or multiple order streams to be more efficient across them, you drive a lot of value from that solution that you're offering to the grocer to improve their business model.
Really good, and I'll tie it in. I'm going back to the progressive grocer that I saw. You know, some of the information that came out of that, and I think this is all squaring up on that, because you're right, David. Where there's maybe some scary numbers on the margin side, what that really means is opportunity for resellers. And so I'm going to give you my VAR. What's in it for the VAR early? So let me throw this at you. When asked, these grocers, what supply chain technologies? Because I think David's hitting the nail right on the head, in the sense that in order to get there, they have to get more efficient and do some of these types of things. So where are they going to be investing their dollars? Where are they going to start doing major upgrades? Well, 15%, and these are the higher numbers. Warehouse management is where they need to, you know, kind of back of house management, real-time inventory management, order management. Those are the top three of major upgrades that grocers are thinking about employing right now. So, it's kind of like cleaning up the back of house, making sure you got all your stuff together and oriented correctly. And then when you think about inventory management specifically, some of the investments are going to go into, again, real-time reporting, kind of computer vision of what's happening in the space. Machine learning and AI are the top four. So, you know, I think there's this whole drive to get more efficient, to enable those types of things, win back some of that margin through some of these technologies.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna tack on two quick things based on what we've been talking about so far. One, we talked a lot about this optimization piece, this idea of optimizing the technology that you've already brought in. Well, I think of this also in a way of, let's say, you know, you were a grocery store, and we know this happened with restaurants too, but definitely I'm sure with grocery stores, where the pandemic happened And we all knew, like, okay, we got to make some changes.
Yep.
We didn't previously offer curbside pickup. We're going to offer that now. We didn't have much self-service technology, if any at all. We got to
do it now. Yeah.
So the necessity and the urgency of doing that meant you probably might have settled for technology that wasn't where you really wanted it to be, wasn't the best that's available, wasn't the best option that was out there. Could be the stuff that does engender, longer workflows, isn't as productive as it could be, isn't profitable as it could be, is again those margin losses that are coming out of it. And so maybe some of those folks might be thinking like, well, why would I do anything more or do anything on top of this? Why would I add on? Why would I try something different when this is already killing my business, even though I know I have to have it now? That conversation could be like, well, hey, what you chose in May of 2020 when you were desperate and you were hemorrhaging money because people didn't want to come in.
Yeah, it's actually advanced a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
a lot of stuff that's changed since then, and it's gotten better.
Right.
How about we find you something that's a little bit better, a little more cost effective, enables better workflows, whatever it is. There's probably opportunities to upgrade what they currently have. So I think that can be a big part of the optimization piece. The other thing here too is when David, you were talking earlier about the idea of knowing when someone has decided, hey, I don't want, or this brand is out of stock. So because it's out of stock, I'm going to choose brand B. I'm willing to settle for brand B. That's something I've noticed, in my whole click and connect aspect, when I'm ordering something, when I got a big order, I place it about an hour before I'm scheduled to pick it up. I get that text that says, hey, you had certain items that were unavailable in your order. Please review. And it'll give me the option to check those out and see what they're offering me as the substitution. And I can make a decision. Do I want the sub, or do I just want to say, no, I only wanted what I wanted and I'm not going to take something else instead? That is valuable data. That, again, for any business that wants data and wants analytics and wants to understand what their customers are doing, think about that same customer in your store. If they're got customers in your store and they bought brand B because they couldn't find brand A, you don't know that in the store unless they've come and asked you.
But you do digitally, yes.
Exactly. But online, you have learned that. That's a valuable piece of information. Like, this customer selected this one. They settled for this. But I've had 20 customers in the same day that did the same exact thing. That tells me I need to be stocking more of brand A.
Yeah, right.
That's useful information, and it's useful information for their brands as well. So again, I think it all comes back to one big picture of just understanding what's happening in your environment.
Absolutely.
Optimizing your processes.
Yep.
I get the feeling over time as people, as these grocery businesses start thinking more about this and start expanding the technology and working more at it.
Oh, yes.
Those margins are going to get back to maybe a little bit more of hopefully.
And they're going to use data to drive a lot of that,
exactly.
Right? Yeah. As you just described.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, David, any last thoughts on this before we get to our value of the VAR?
No, I think you've pulled out a really important point about the progression in the solutions and how we're approaching this margin loss or this margin preservation across all of these. And it's not a problem, right? It's not just expensive for a regional grocer in one area to deliver through a third-party delivery or to have an employee pick the entire order. It's an issue and a margin erosion across the entire grocery vertical there. And there's a lot of interest, a lot of work, a lot of investigation into how to preserve those margins. And it's progressing all the time. So kind of constantly looking at how we continue to stay at the leading edge of that, tie it into these other investment areas that are happening. The inventory management is a really interesting one for me that I like to keep my eye on. And, they're going to continue to progress. The solutions are going to continue to improve, and the way that they interconnect are just going to continue to advance throughout the next couple of years.
All right, well, hey, then before we wrap this up and tell our VARs maybe how they can cash in on this, especially if you work in the SMB space, where they don't have the giant budgets and discretionary funds to go out and introduce any new technology. I want to, as always, thank the TEConnect members, those who are sponsors of our program, those who sponsor the podcast. Of course, Epson is one of those. Thank you so much for your support of the show and for lending us David today, and also for putting together your fantastic studio just so you can look good on the podcast.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's taking things a step further. Everybody else has got to step up, like you said now. So,
all right.
For folks that want to stay in touch with us, first of all, if you like the show, you got to tell us. We need to know.
Yep.
I mean, we're just cruising along here doing our thing. And granted, we'll just keep doing our thing and talking all we want, but we don't know what we don't know if you do or don't like the show. So a couple ways you can do that. One, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment for us. Tell us what you thought of the topic. You know, if you've got some other points you want to make or you have questions to ask that we can relay back to the Epson team, send those in. If you're listening on the podcast of your choice, if you have the opportunity to rate and review, please do that, especially on Apple Podcasts. 5-star rating review goes a long way to helping us get, exposed to other folks in the industry that may not know about us. And of course, if you have ideas for the show, that's really important to us too. We want to make content that you want to hear and watch and listen to, and people you want to hear from, stuff you want us to talk about, industries you want us to tackle.
Not just
technology.
our aimless rambling.
No,
Yes,
I mean,
right.
again, we can do this all day. Dean and I will happily turn the camera on and just ramble
right.
about whatever we want.
Yeah.
But it's probably going to make a little more sense if we know what you want to hear from us. So there's always a link in the show notes, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening to a podcast of your choice. You find this link in there. You can submit ideas to us for the show. Again, who do you want to hear from? What do you want to hear about? What technology should we be talking about? What kind of industry focus do you want us to get into? Is there a product you want us to do a little bit of a deeper dive on with somebody? Leave that information for us just for submitting an idea, whether we use it or not. We will send you a TEConnect podcast
That's
t-shirt.
right. There you go. Get a free shirt out of it.
Free shirt. Come
Done.
on.
Yep.
If no
Boom.
work on your part other than just typing up a few words, coming up with something simple, and we'll send you a t-shirt. And if we use your idea, we'll maybe even talk to you about it, get a little more insight on what you want to hear about, and shout you out on the podcast potentially too. So no reason not to do that. And of course, as always, if you want to stay in contact with us and stay connected with us, you can always find us on Twitter at TEConnectPod and email us techconnect@bluestarinc.com. All right, let's wrap things up here. First of all, with our value to the VAR.
Yes.
We've kind of hinted at a lot of this already.
Yes. I already did mine.
But you did, yeah. So we'll let David give his here. So let's talk about these VARs that are working primarily with SMB grocer chains, independents that are, local independent stores. What's the pitch there? How do they go to these stores and convince them, hey, you need to be up in your game with color labeling. You need to be up in your game with self-service checkout, whatever it is that, whatever new technology you need to implement in order to make your business a little more efficient. How does that pitch go with them if they're thinking, look, there's no way I can compete with the big dogs, so why should I try?
I think it starts right there. You don't have to compete directly. You don't have to do the exact same thing as the big dogs to be successful and to find the success for your customer. And I'm going to go back to my surveys one more time before you send me off here. But RS News, right, they did a survey. 2/3 of the respondents were grocery operators who had fewer than 10 stores. 71% saw increased private label sales over the last year. This isn't a phenomenon limited to the big guys. And when we get into the SMB space, those local, the more embedded stores, the ones who have the connection to the communities that they're around, it's going to be a different key aspect for each of them that really brings that extra level of value to their customers, and being able to provide that as a VAR with the solutions that allow the dynamism, allow you to change it to match exactly what they're looking for, is a huge value add to them, right? And it's not just the labeling one then. If you can tie that into the other services or modules that you're providing, whether it's inventory management, whether it's improving the delivery one, being able to link all of those, which we've been doing during the podcast today, the more of those that you can link, the more interest it drives from the customers, the more that they're going to want to source from you, and the more revenue that comes from it.
There
Perfect.
you go.
I love it.
Yep, I love it.
All right. The only thing I'll add on here is a little bit of future proofing.
Okay.
So I was recently reading an article about how the White House was conducting a hunger and food summit recently, which apparently is the first time they've done anything like this since the Nixon administration. But,
What?
Yeah. So basically, they wanted to get together and talk about like, hey, what can we do to ensure that more people are well fed and that they have healthy choices, and basically just addressing how people eat and what they eat and what Americans do when it comes to their food on a regular basis. And part of this conversation that came out of this was this idea that they want to start making even more transparency around how good for you or not good for you foods are. And going beyond the basic, like, the giant chart that we see on everything of like, what percentage of daily values of sodium and carbs and all that stuff. The stuff that you might skim over. You might look at the calorie count and that's about it.
Exactly.
Unless you have a specific dietary need.
Right.
I'll check out where fiber is sometimes. Like I try to keep a nice fiber diet or whatever. So I might look at that. But otherwise, most people aren't reading through all that stuff. They're not paying attention to the stuff that isn't good for them there as much. So there's been talk about, improving those labels and, making them a little more obvious or having some kind of obvious label that indicates good for you, okay, nope, kind of stuff. And I look at this, I think someone threw out, I don't know if this is what they'll do or not, like almost like a traffic light kind of thing. Like, green means, hey, this is healthy, good food, is good for you, gives you everything you need. Yellow is like, a little cautionary. It's not terrible, but, be careful. And then red being like, nah, this is going to taste great, but it's not good for you at all, So my thing is that if that's the kind of stuff is coming down the bike, and we know, the slow churn of, government regulation and like this kind of stuff happening could be years off. But again, it's a kind of conversation you could potentially have with your grocery partners and say, hey, I've heard this is coming. There's going to be, a necessity for this. And if you're doing, again, your own private label, if you're doing your own in-store, meal kits or pickups or, grab and go type food, you're probably going to need to be labeling it this way too. So let's start talking right now about how you're going to accomplish that, because you're going to need to make that happen.
Need to get into it.
Color labeling is going to be the way to do it.
That's right. Yep. There you go.
To me, just a little bit of future proofing. It might be a conversation you can start with someone that's a little more reticent about this. But David's suggestions are definitely the go-tos. Mine's just more of a, hey, keep that in your back pocket as, if you get someone who's really stubborn, be like, look, you may not have a choice at some point.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep up with the Joneses.
Because the big brands, they're going to pivot quickly. They're going to be,
of course.
They're going to be way ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
They're going to be ready to go and roll this out when it happens.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's wrap things up as always with our favorite segment, What's TEConnecting with You? This is where we get to talk about something in the world of science, tech, innovation, something that's caught our attention that we're playing with or paying attention to, or maybe something that's terrifying. It could go anyway. David, we'll let you start. What's TEConnecting with you right now?
I might have a combination of terrifying and connecting with me, but very excited. The World Cup is coming up, kicking off in November. And it's going to be, kind of the coming out party for a new video assistant referee system specifically for the offside rule, right? So without getting into too many details about the rule itself, it's very important the relative position of the players' bodies on the field. What they're doing, they're installing 12 cameras in every stadium, constantly tracking the position of the ball and 29 different points on every player on the field.
Wow. Does
it 50 times a second, and they use it to determine whether someone is in an offside position. So having that in every field, watching all of the players, they're going to use it to show 3D models of the exact position of the players' bodies when the ball is kicked, when it becomes an issue on the big screens in the stadiums. It's a great step forward in terms of the rule itself. But man, that much tracking on that and being able to have that kind of precision installed in these, full stadium sizes, I'm just really interested to see how the implementation goes off and what is one of the largest sporting events in the world.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No doubt.
That is pretty cool. Did not know they were doing that.
Talk about a proving ground. You're going to do it anywhere. Do it during the World Cup.
We're just going to do it during the World Cup. Yeah, just go straight for the top echelon.
I mean, I guess if you want to prove that you can do something, do it on the biggest stage possible. So a literal world stage. Yeah.
But it's also good that soccer, football, whatever, is catching up to the rest of the world, right? Like tennis has had the little, you can see the ball where it lands on the line. Of course, baseball with the whole, strike zone. Right. Even though the ump is still calling it, they show you that in real time. That's interesting. I guess some umpires are out of a job though. Those guys with the flags.
We'll call it. They'll reallocate them to other purposes.
Yes, yes, they'll do like.
Honestly, if I were in that job, I'd probably feel a little bit about this too, because at least no one can scream and yell at you and send death threats to you, or whatever, because they think you got a call
terrible
wrong.
Call. Yeah.
I always go back to, if you remember, this has probably been about a decade ago now. The guy who called. It was a Major League Baseball umpire, and he called, there was a perfect game in progress. The Tigers, Armando Galarraga, I think was his name, had a perfect game. A guy who had nothing else going on in his career, but could have had a perfect game.
Yep.
And a ball that was a clear out at first got called by the ump as a single. And everyone on the planet, the replay is very clear. Granted, now they have replay challenges to do that. Very clear. But this poor man, had his life probably torn apart. Like he felt genuinely bad about this. He ruined this kid's life. Or not ruined his life. He's still a well-paid baseball player, but ruined his chance at history.
Yes,
books,
there you go. Yeah.
Because of one bad call.
The asterisk call. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think about stuff like that. I'm like, if I were an umpire,
we need
maybe I would be a
computers,
little more okay with this kind of stuff. Like, as long as it doesn't put me out of a job, I might be like, all right, this takes the burden off people getting mad at me about this stuff. So, all right.
That's a good one, David.
What's TEConnect with you?
So I got two. I got a follow-up to one that I had previously, the whole DART mission by NASA to nudge Dimorphos.
I was going to ask you about
the
this.
results are in.
Yep.
So we already know that it was able to slow down Dimorphos by 32 minutes.
Yeah.
So, instead of
apparently it was better than they expected it to
better
be.
than they expected. And instead of taking 11 hours and 55 minutes to orbit around the other whatever asteroid that's out there, it can do it. It's doing it in 11 hours and 23 minutes. So right?
Yeah.
They did what they wanted it to do.
We accomplished the mission.
They can nudge it.
We can move stuff in space intentionally.
And now I think the guy from NASA is quoted as saying he's like defending Earth at this point in time. We got it.
All right, so
NASA has the defense done.
I have now a science fiction idea for someone to write or make a movie out of.
Yes.
We deflect an asteroid that's on its way to Earth.
Yes.
And eventually, let's say 1,000,000 years later or 1,000 years later, it finds its way to an alien planet and destroys it, and they realize we were the ones that did it, and they come for revenge.
Man, it takes a little long to play out, but that's okay.
Can you imagine one day you're just hanging around and all of a sudden aliens invade and you're like, what's your beef with us? Like, no, we don't.
Yeah.
Like 1,000 years ago, you deflected an asteroid and it destroyed our planet, and it's taken us another 1,000 years to get here, but we're on it.
Oh, that's just your pal like the Star Wars universe. And now you can have 1,000 years that you can do all these development stories in between. Yes.
Exactly.
All right. So here's my second one.
Okay.
Boston Dynamics and 5 other robotics companies pledge not to weaponize their
on my list
prototypes.
too.
Oh, was it?
Not today's, but this was on my list.
All right.
Yes.
So, that's kind of good news, right? So I don't know, David, we always talk about Boston Robotics, and, those are the guys that come out with these robots that seemingly do human or dog, right? They've got their dog too that's out there. Well, here's a quote. We believe that adding weapons to robots that are remotely or autonomously operated, widely available to the public, and capable of navigating to previously inaccessible locations where people live and work raises new risks of harm and serious ethical issues. Okay,
agreed.
So thank you very much to Boston Dynamics, but not so fast. Ghost Robotics, who's another robotics out there, is not really signing on to this letter. It was literally like a letter.
That's exactly what I thought too. Isn't somebody going to sit there and go their loss is our gain now,
Well, so Ghost Robotics would be the one. And here's their quote. Why? We don't make the payloads. Are we going to promote and advertise that any of these weapon systems? Well, probably not, but that's a tough one to answer because we're selling to the military. We don't want to blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So there is still one out there that has not signed on to the letter that they're not going to
So there you go. When the robot apocalypse occurs, it's not Cyberdyne, it's Ghost Robotics.
Yes. Just thought I'd give you the inside edge on that.
Yeah, I saw that article too. It was one of those, I read that originally and was like, oh, this is great.
But wait a minute. I have even more better news for you.
Oh, okay.
Here.
All right.
Ghost Robotics, here, direct quote, we do draw the line on where these are sold. We only sell to the U.S. and allied governments. We don't even sell our robots or enterprise customers and blah, blah, blah. We get inquiries from Russia and China, but we don't ship there. So there, right? Okay, so if they're going to build them, if they're going to only build
today's ally is tomorrow's enemy.
Oh.
Let's be honest.
So that's not giving you any comfort?
Sure, maybe in the immediacy it's fine, but we piss off the wrong ally, and tomorrow they decide hey, send the robot dogs after them.
Well, now you know. So anyway, what's TEConnecting with you, John?
All right, so let's say you went out and you got yourself a brand new iPhone 14.
Okay,
maybe one of the newest Apple Watches.
Yeah, whiz bang.
Well, there's a cool new innovation with those that people are enjoying and think is a nice safety aspect. It's called crash detection.
Oh, okay.
So basically, if you have a new iPhone 14 or most of the new Apple smartwatches, they have crash detection built in. They use basically the gyroscopes within them and some other sensors or whatever to identify if you've been in a major crash, It will send an alert. It basically gives you 10 seconds to manually override. Otherwise, it will send an alert to emergency services that something has happened to you.
This is something I hope to never use, but go ahead.
Exactly. I hope so too. I think it's a smart innovation. I think it's a useful one. However, as is the case with a lot of innovations, there's been a bug that's been found. Which is that apparently if you ride a roller coaster with these, it thinks that you've been in a crash.
Yeah, you're dying. Clearly, your body is being flailed around in some way.
And I'm sorry, when I'm riding a roller coaster, I'm not going to pay attention to an alert that tells me you've got 10 seconds before we call EMS.
Are you serious, bro? So these things are like dialing out. Anybody's riding
EMS have been falsely called to amusement parks for potential injury and crashes that are not actually happening.
All right, so we need a swipe left and then a little roller coaster icon.
You can, exactly. You can turn it off, obviously, or you could not take it onto the coaster with you. But yes, there probably needs to be something. I would almost think you'd have to have something that kind of like when you go to certain places and your phone location tracks and knows where you are.
And knows needs to shut it down.
I see you're in an amusement park. Would you like to turn off crash detection so you can comfortably ride roller coasters without being hassled today?
No, there's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So if that does it automatically and somebody actually does have a thing and then they take their oh my gosh.
And now, granted, I'm sure to me the benefits outweigh this potential issue. And I'm sure even
100%.
Even the folks in EMS would be like, hey,
right,
we'd rather be able to go help the folks that this actually needed to be helped, that were in a serious accident or something, and maybe have a few false calls because someone's riding a roller coaster than not having this technology at all. So
there you go. All right.
But I'm sure they'll probably figure out some way to help out with that. So, all right, that does it for us today. David Vander Dussen from Epson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to the next time.
Yeah, we got to unplug. So until next time, go have a drink at your grocery bar.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
And
private labeled beer.
And hopefully you don't get into an auto accident after the fact. If you do, have an iPhone 14. If you ride a roller coaster, you might be in some trouble too. But
fair enough.
Until next time, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect Podcast is brought to you by Epson. Looking to enable your customers with fast, portable, wireless receipt printers?
Who wouldn't?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right?
Epson has you covered with the latest in their line of mobile ink printers, the 3-inch TM-P82 and the 2-inch P22. Now, the first thing that struck me about these printers is the sleek, simplistic look.
I was going to say, have you seen these
They're
things?
so cool looking. They remind me of the simple design like of the Apple TV, like the actual streaming set-top box. But it's got a slot for a receipt. Other than that, it's so cool. It's just perfect. This cool little rectangular puck kind of shape. I love it. Well, beyond looking cool, Epson has packed these new models with features perfect for on-the-go POS needs. They're ultra compact and lightweight for easy belt clipping, IP54 water and dust resistant with up to 6.9-foot drop protection, long battery life, 27 hours for the 2-inch model, 47 for the 3-inch. I can't even get that out of any of my devices.
Yeah, right.
And fast charge in as little as 2.5 hours.
What?
So we know Epson is big on connectivity also. So both models offer Wi-Fi 5 or Bluetooth 5.0, exceptional print quality, 100 millimeter per second print speeds, 1-year limited warranty with extended plan options. As the generations younger than us might say, these printers slap.
I like it.
I don't know what that means, but they slap. Man, I feel so old
They're good.
saying that.
They're
good.
really good.
Yeah. But let's be honest, back in the day, we used to say things like bad. It's bad,
Yeah.
meaning good.
Right?
Like,
Yes.
It's sick, meaning good, whatever.
Whatever.
Check out the link in the show notes for spec sheets on the new Mobile League printers and just marvel at the lovely simplicity of these devices.